I am looking at where I need to start the stringer, or where the stringer is going to be, so that I can then figure out the plasterboard, figure out the stud, and then I'll know exactly where I am. The way that I'm doing that is I want that staircase there to be the same width as this one. Now, we are not having a handrail. We don't need one. There's going to be a wall there, and there'll be a wall there, and it's only going to be whatever this is, kind of 820, 830 wide, something like that, which is measured to the outside of the stringer. So what I'm doing is I've got two good points here to bear off, and you can see that the stringer is pretty straight actually there off these newel posts. And what I've done is I'm figuring out what this is to the inside of my stringer. So I'm coming in here like this. Now you can't see, I don't think, but that's 35 mil. So that is where I can now mark. Now you'll see, so I can mark 35 mil like this. That's going to be the inside of the stringer. I originally worked it out very roughly. I didn't have all of this open, I didn't have this brick here, and I measured it and I worked it out and I figured out roughly what it would be. And I'm actually quite a long way off. So it always makes sense, rather than just taking arbitrary measurements, to go back and do it again and just to double check. So 35 mil in from the edge of this is where the inside edge of the string is going to be. So we'll then have the thickness of the stringer, then we'll have the plasterboard, then we can have the stud. So yeah, that's what I'm doing now. What I'll then do is a very quick visual check, because obviously visually this newel post is here, but it won't be there on this. So I'll take a quick look after. Right, I've marked that up here, outside edge of stringer. Stringers come in pairs, so you have one on each side. These are all pre-cut, and I then slot the stairs in between. So what I can now do is I can now place one string on one side. I can deduct, or I can actually then place another stringer on this side, hard up against this plasterboard. Give or take 5 mil for plaster skim and fixings and cork and movement, and then I'll know what the distance between them is, and I can measure what the distance to this depth is. If you measure to the depth to the face of the stringer, then your tread will be short, because it needs to go into this groove here and into this groove here. So the distance between here and here is the most important thing. But I can lay these stringers on now, and I can look at it and and measure that distance. Very, very roughly, it's going to look something like that. But obviously far more square and actually, on the beams. Now the reason that it looks like this is because these I bought this online. This was the minimum run that I could get. It was 3 steps, or 4 steps technically. That was the minimum run that I could get that came pre-made, and that was fine because I always knew that I'd need to cut it down. What I'm going to have is, you'll see the angle here. If you imagine kind of cutting all of this out, this will then pivot down, and this steel is going to act as the first step in the run, with the last step being the top up there. So it isn't really an issue. I knew that was going to be the case, so I can now kind of figure out what that is, cut it down to size, and then put it back in. But you can see here I've given myself quite a lot of wriggle room for how wide this ends up being. I obviously don't want it as wide as that, because it's kind of just over the nose of this top step here, which isn't ideal. And I still need to frame out the stud wall. So there's going to be, a stud wall around here. So this will be stepped back a little bit, something like that, give or take, like that, except square obviously, and then it will work quite nicely. Alright, so I've been spending a little bit of time, in fact I've taken quite a long time over this because I don't want to get it wrong, looking, thinking, measuring, assessing, the whole lot. What I've done is I've attached a big 8x3 up into here that keeps me off and allows me to kind of frame out a little bit, gives me a bit of space to frame. What I'm going to do, I'm actually going to end up cutting it off at this point here and then running another 8x3 vertically up that will come up and support this concrete lintel, and then I can chop off this side of the concrete lintel, chop off this side of the concrete lintel and open it up a little bit higher. So I need to support this somehow, and I'm going to do that by framing out straight on that steel. For now I've left it long because it gives me something to attach to figure out where the string is going, and I can easily get a saw, a recip saw down there, multi-cutter, whatever I need to chop that down to then get one long piece the whole way up, because that'd be stronger than having a short piece to here and then framing off that. There's no point, that steel is super strong, so I'll just frame it directly off there. As I say, I've left it long for now so that I can attach this on and work out where I'm going to be. So what I've done, I've put a nice flat base on here, and I've lined this up, and I've used my spirit level to make sure that this portion of the stringer is perfectly vertical, which it is. That is on there, you see, so that lines up. That lines up with there. With a bit of parallax, you can see that that is level, that is plumb. And then what I've done is I've measured the distance from this portion here to there is 22 mil, and then from here to the top of this one is just under 20 mil. So I obviously then need to deduct the thickness of the tread here, which is 22 mil, and that gives me how much I need to chop off the bottom of this. Effectively, long story short and waffling over, this tread here is going to be sat on this steel beam. That's the long and short of it. That's what's going to happen. But what I need to do is figure out exactly how much of this I need to cut off in order to make that happen. And I do still want to keep something here so that I can put the front of the riser in and the wedge in the back, just to make it look nice and neat. And then I'll chop the front of this off in line with the rest of that. It's a bit finicky really, but it will work. I don't want to take too long over this. We've got family coming over, and this isn't overly safe for kids and family. So what I've done is I have plasterboarded here, just very quickly, leaving enough space for the other bit on top to catch. I've measured between here, and it is exactly 797 to the wall. I've kind of drawn the stringer, the step, stringer, then the wall, and that is 797. They're completely loose at the minute. What I'll actually end up doing is building the staircase, gluing, screwing it and all the rest of it, and then I'll slot it into place and then fix it in. I think that's going to be the safest and easiest way for me to do this. I have temporarily screwed this in place here, and that is just to hold this level, because this is about as level as I'm going to get it. You see there, the top of the tread is nice and level. It does get wedged up from underneath, so it will kind of hold that in place firmly. So that's nice and level there, like that. And basically what it allows me to do, you see, so the top of the treads on each three of these are level. What I can then do is I can measure from here to where the bottom of the tread is going to be. So from there to there. And then I can take that measurement off of this section here, going up this way. And I can leave this bit here, so I can then work out how high up I need to come. If we do that, 13 inches, because that's the side that it's on. So that's 6 3/4 there. So then I would measure to 6 3/4 there, and I'll strike a line, take it off. I know this is a bit confusing because I did this in permanent marker the first time when I was roughly measuring it. I got it wrong, so ignore this black line. This line here where I have the kite marks, the K marks, That's the line that I'm going to be cutting vertically, and I'm going to be doing it right into here. There. So this tread will sit on this steel beam. The other thing that I'm just going to do, just to double check my working, because it's always good to double check. Obviously I'm going to have to cut this out, but I can check the distance between here and what all of the rise is from on this section here, and that distance should be the same. So I'm just going to measure that and just double check. Once I've done that and I'm happy, I will cut this out, and then also this will get cut flush up here. Once I'm happy with that, I will do this one, and then I will transfer all of my markings to this. So that will become the template. Rather than trying to measure it, if there's any slight difference between there and there for whatever reason, it's going to throw me out. Whereas if that's the template and I do it off that, I can then build the staircase, put it in, and then I can shim and wedge and whatever else I need to do. I've cut up this side. I was very careful to keep this straight. If I needed to adjust the saw, I'd always move it this way. So you see this side is a little bit uneven, but this side here is very, very fine and straight. Something I've done is I've just, on the underside where this is the face side, this is the underside, so you'd see this area. On the underside I've just screwed it down a little bit just to hold it in place, like a vise or a clamp, but with screws. You'll never see that because there'll be plasterboard running up the underside here, and then the treads and the treads, so that's hidden. Screwed it in place to make it easier for me. Now I've got enough space to turn the saw, turn my body, and come along this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get my ruler in here just to start me off on this line, and then I can ease in. I'm not pushing the saw, I'm just gently easing the saw in, letting the saw do the work, and just taking my time with it. I'm not rushing this at all. The other point to note is obviously this is angled here because you drive wedges in. If I cut it along this line and this angle, this is going to sit higher on the steel than this bit, and it will kick it out. So I need to cut from here perfect 90 degrees. The wedge will still fit under, there will just be a slight gap, but it will be on the side here that's hidden that you'll never see. So just for this one I need to cut more like that, so it's nice and 90 degrees to this line here. Hopefully that's clear. I appreciate it might not be. A lot of this is kind of in my head rather than on this piece of paper, but I'll still be able to drive the wedge underneath and it won't be visible. This steel is perfectly flat this way, so I need to have this piece of timber cut flat this way, otherwise the back will sit high and the bottom will sit low. Right, that is now cut. I haven't actually tested this yet, but let me just check how square that is. Yeah, it's not bad. Not bad. Let's see how we get on. Moment of truth. I'll unscrew these and I'll put it in place. Right, I installed this one and it worked fine. I'll show you that in a second. I didn't film it because we've got people coming around. I've got to crack on. What I've done now is I've lined these two up with each other really flush and smooth, like that, and I've used the same screw holes now to screw these together so they're perfectly flush, and then I can transfer all of my markings and use this one as the template for this one. So I'm going to do that now, cut it up, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So that is now cut. I need a new blade. Sadly, it costs more to sharpen a blade than it does to buy a new one, which tells you everything you need to know about the world we live in today. But anyway, that is now done and cut. So what I can do is I can measure the distance between the inside here and the inside there, and I'll take probably 3 points of reference, or maybe even 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, just so that I'm really accurate, and work out an average if there's a slight difference between them. That's not uncommon. Then I can start cutting down the treads and the risers, glue, screw together, and we are home and dry. So I'm going to do that now. Got everything cut down to size, 760 in length, treads and risers. I've got a polythene glue here. Pretty sure it's polythene. It's not polyurethane. Oh, polymer. It's a polymer glue. Sticks all absolutely amazing glue. I've got grey just because that's what I had open. And yeah, so I'm going to put a bead of glue all in here. I've got all of my bits here, so I will be getting all of this open now. Getting all my wedges and all of that sort of stuff out ready in place. I've got some nice long clamps that I'll get to the right width, so I'm all set up and ready to go. That's all glued up. Now, when I was banging in this wedge, I hammered it a little bit too hard, and so this bit popped off, so I've just put a little nail in here just to hold it. Don't want to drive it too far because I don't want to split that out. That's good enough there, and I put a wedge up top here. Polymer glue is setting up and holding nicely, so that's really good. With these wedges, you don't nail those, you just glue them in place, so that's fine. It looks like it's come together okay. I'm going to flip it up, slot it in place. And that's a wrap. This is nice and flush here with the front. That I can round off slightly with a hand plane. That's fine. I don't know what happened with my measurements, but I think that it wasn't quite fully square, because I've got a gap there and then a gap there, but the staircase is square, so I think that this space was ever so slightly parallelogram. So my measurements between would always have been 760, but the angle was slightly off. So you then put a square staircase in, you end up with gaps at opposite corners, which isn't a problem. You can lose it with plasterboard, you can lose it with trim, you can lose it with mastic. That's actually what happens when you build these things. That is just how it is. Ironically, that is the exact piece that fits in there. Isn't that funny? So that I can plasterboard from this side of it in the garage. That's fine. You'll never know, never see it. Or better yet, I'll just put one sheet of plasterboard over the whole thing, like this one. Like that. But I can recut the angle, so it'll just sit on there like that. Either way, that is done, and it works perfectly well. And then there'll be the 22mm chipboard will come up and slide up to that. So that's in there nice and tight. Just going to snug that up and put a nail down in there, and that's it, I'm done. I hope you found that useful, hope you found that helpful. I know it's very individual and specific to me, but hopefully it gives you enough inspiration of what you can do in your own home with your own space. If you're new to the channel, please do like, comment, subscribe, tell me what I've done wrong so others can learn from it. And I'll see you on the next video.